Welcome back. The New York City Mayor's Public Engagement Unit has created a partnership with OpenIgloo to help share information about New York City tenants' rights with the focus on heat laws and illegal lockouts in New York City. The hope for this partnership is to help inform, educate, and empower tenants about their renters' rights. Joining me now to share more details is Allia Mohamed, the co-founder and CEO of OpenIgloo. Alia, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, just to start off, can you tell me a little bit about your organization, Open Igloo?
Yeah, OpenIgloo is a platform helping New York City renters find better buildings and landlords. So, apartment hunters are using OpenIgloo to read and share reviews about their rental experiences, but also access city data on the properties they're considering. So, things like open violations, bed bug history, litigation history, and so forth.
So, tell me a little bit about how this organization came about. What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so a core part of OpenIgloo's mission is to support renters, and a part of our initiative is sharing a lot of content and resources about tenants' rights in New York City. And there's a lot of programs, a lot of laws, a lot of rules to navigate. And luckily, the mayor's office has those same initiatives, right? Trying to spread awareness on all of the programs that they've created to help keep renters safe. So it was really a great synergy between the mayor's public engagement unit as well as OpenIgloo to try and partner up and really just shine a light on all of the regulations and resources that tenants have access to.
And prior to this partnership, just tell me a little bit about how this organization came together and was formed.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. So OpenIgloo started in 2020, and it was really an inspiration of, me and my co-founders' challenges, living and renting in New York, right? Everything from finding the apartment, moving into the apartment, finally moving into the apartment and maybe not having, a very responsive landlord. And that was at least my experience. So when I was apartment hunting for my next apartment, I really wanted to do more research on the building and landlord. I didn't really find the resources I was looking for, so I went very very low tech. I started standing outside of buildings, hovering around, waiting for people walking in and out saying, "Hey, do you live here? How's the landlord? How's the building? Should I move in?" And I just got so much valuable information from doing that. So that was really the inspiration behind OpenIgloo, which is, could we build this platform to really crowdsource this information and help renters sort of do their own background check on a building and landlord before they sign a lease, in the same way that landlords get to do, their due diligence and background checks on renters before agreeing to give them a lease.
I think that's amazing. Now, a major concern for many tenants is access to heat and hot water, and we're now moving out of the winter and more into the spring months. So, are landlords still required to monitor heat and hot water?
Yeah, great question. And it's a complaint that we hear on OpenIgloo a lot about either heat that's not functioning at all, maybe heat that's overworking a little too much, which is a pretty common complaint in New York City. But generally, the city has something called a heat season, and it runs from October 1st to May 31st. And during that period, landlords are legally obligated to make sure that tenants have functioning and sufficient heat depending on outdoor temperatures. So, during the day, if the outdoor temperature falls below 55 degrees, then your indoor temperature needs to be 68 degrees. And overnight, no matter what the temperature is outside, your indoor temperature needs to be 62 degrees. So even in the springtime, your heat should still be kicking in when those temperature triggers hit.
Okay, so, are there any other seasonal requirements other than that quote unquote heat season?
That is the main seasonal requirement. The other important thing to note is this just applies to heat, right? So hot water needs to be working 365 days a year, 24/7. So that is not applicable to the heat season. It needs to run all year long.
Okay, and now what should a tenant do if they notice that due to slightly warmer spring temperatures, their landlords aren't really offering heat at night?
Yeah, so this is an important point, right? So you definitely want to, if you have an indoor thermometer, right, where you're measuring, okay, the heat's not kicking in, my indoor temperature is not 62 degrees as it should be. The first thing you want to do is you want to make the landlord aware or the management company aware. Send an email, make a phone call, bring the issue to their attention, give them an opportunity to resolve the issue. Of course, if they are persistently not addressing the issue, they're not being responsive, that's a time that you could potentially involve the city. So this is a really important resource, and one of the things that we partnered up with the mayor's office is to shine a light on their tenant support unit. So you can call 311, you could ask to speak to a tenant support specialist, and they're going to walk you through the process on filing a complaint if they think that's necessary, giving you a little bit of advice, potentially connecting you with other resources.
And over the past 3 years, we saw several New Yorkers fear the possibility of eviction. Are landlords allowed to automatically evict tenants?
So, luckily, New York City has very strong eviction protections compared to other cities in the United States, and automatically evicting tenants is not something that happens in New York. So, it's really important that if a tenant receives a letter or some sort of eviction notice from their landlord, that doesn't mean that they have to leave immediately. And this is something that we really want to shine a light on, because a lot of tenants, they get a letter like that. Maybe they get a little bit nervous. They're like, okay, the landlord says I need to be out in 2 weeks because they're evicting me. And they self evict, right? They leave the property on their own accord. So it's really, really important to, validate that the notices that you're getting are legitimate. And this is another great time to call the tenant support unit, ask to speak to a tenant support specialist, and ask them, is this notice legitimate? What should I do next? But typically, automatic evictions, not something that occurs in New York City.
That's good to know. And in New York City, lockouts are illegal. So, what may an illegal lockout look like?
Yeah, great question. So, evictions come in different shapes and sizes, and illegal lockouts is one of those forms. So, maybe you come home from work and your locks are changed, right? You're not able to access your unit, or perhaps the landlord has removed your items from the home. So that's sort of the things of what an illegal lockout is, and it is completely illegal. It's considered a misdemeanor in New York City. The mayor's public engagement unit recommends, if you're feeling comfortable, to call 911. The police can help sort of de-escalate situations or supervise while you regain access to the unit. But again, really great time to leverage the tenant support unit if you ever find yourself in that tricky situation.
And according to OpenIgloo, short term tenants and undocumented renters are also protected from evictions and lockouts. Can you expand a little bit more on this?
Yeah, so one of the more common things, more vulnerable groups, maybe tenants who've only lived in a space for a short period of time, or perhaps they're undocumented, they might be intimidated into vacating their homes. So it's really important for them to know that they have the exact same rights as any other tenant. Once you have occupied a space for 30 days, you have the same rights as if you were a tenant that's lived there for a year, 2 years, or 20 years. So that's a really important thing to know.
Okay. And so, can you tell me a little bit about the Know Your Rights campaign?
Yeah, so the Know Your Rights campaign is an initiative by the mayor's office to really shine a light and bring more information about tenant rights to renters. Right, there's over 5.5 million renters in New York City, dozens of pieces of tenant legislation that's really important for tenants to know so that they can enforce their rights, be a little bit more empowered in navigating the housing system. And it goes beyond just heat and hot water and illegal lockouts. There's laws about security deposits, right? You're supposed to get your security deposit back within 14 days of your move out. Other regulations about, you are entitled to living in a safe, hazard-free space, a space free of pests, of mold, of leaks, of any types of danger. So it's really important for renters to know their rights, and that's really the spirit behind the Know Your Rights campaign.
That's amazing. And with that, how can we hold landlords accountable when they fall through on providing just basic necessities?
This is a tricky question to answer, right? Because there's no one straight solution. It really is this sort of persistent, ongoing push to hold landlords accountable. And the city has come with various programs to try and enforce the various laws that they put in place. But one of the ways is for renters to know their rights, know what they're entitled to communicate with their landlord as much as they can, right? You don't necessarily need to go straight to 311, straight to the city on every single infraction, but having that line of communication, having records of your communication, filing complaints if you need to. Another part is, sharing that experience on a platform like OpenIgloo, so future renters can be aware and say, oh, you know what, this is not a building I should move into. This is not a landlord I should support. This isn't a landlord I should put money into their pockets because they're not treating their buildings and their tenants fairly. So there's a few different tools in the toolkits, but it really needs to be this sort of persistent, ongoing movement.
Absolutely. And speaking of, tools in the toolkit, can you tell me what tools and resources does OpenIgloo provide specifically?
Yeah, so on OpenIgloo, you can research any address in New York City. So we really wanted to make it easier to type in an address and get, the 411 on everything. So, reading and sharing those rental experiences. And we're asking tenants very detailed questions. And important to note that these reviews are completely anonymous because we did want to protect renters' identities when they were sharing some of these experiences. So we're asking them, did you get your security deposit back? How do you rate the building on pest control, heat, water pressure, cleanliness, garbage management? And it's very typical in New York City. No building is perfect. Lots of our buildings are old. You might have a building with great water pressure and horrible heat, a really responsive super, but the occasional cockroach in the summer. So it's really important to give renters this information. And then the other thing is pulling in all the city data that's associated with that address and landlord. One, who owns this building, right? Is this a small mom and pop landlord or is this a big conglomerate? That's really important information for a renter to know. Are there any open violations, any litigation history? What's the eviction history, right? Does this landlord evict 10 tenants a year, and how does that make you feel as a prospective renter? So those are some of the resources. The other things, if you go to openigloo.com, we have things like rent calculators, email templates to help renters negotiate their rent, and other content and resources to help shine a light on those tenant rights that we've been speaking about.
That's amazing. Allia, I want to thank you for taking the time out to join us today and to speak with us.
Thanks for having me.
To learn more about your rights as a tenant and to find more details about this partnership, please go to their website at www.openigloo.com or follow them on Instagram at OpenIgloo. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.